So we're going to try and do this poppy scene by flooding the paper with colour, but not doing it into onto a wet surface like the previous demonstration. We're going to do it slightly dry and then build it up. So what we do is work direct onto the paper to start with. So I have got here some lemon yellow. Okay, what's that? About ½ an inch of lemon yellow. I've got here some emerald green. Now I don't often use emerald green, or you could use iridium, but the greens of the poppy leaf are very light and bright. So what we do is we get our damp sponge, and I first get the yellow spread about a bit, and there are actually some yellow flowers here as well. So this is damp sponge, no wet in the paint at all, and then I get the green and blur it into it like this. And you get the most sort of beautiful transparent colour, just working onto paper. You could do this on a canvas or a board just as successfully. So I haven't tried, other than sort of flooding it across here, I haven't tried to compose anything yet, because the basis of this technique is to try and create naturalistic forms by using random techniques. So we've now got, doesn't fall over, we've now got some really light bright greens, and if you look at some of the poppy leaves, you'll see that they are a very pale, cold green. So we need to put some white into it. So just literally putting plain white on my brush, I can brush it into these areas. And I'm just trying to produce a general sort of frilly pattern of leaves. Now that colour will dry and then I can go on it more. But as it mixes into the yellow and the green, it's a colder. Look, if I actually press it into it, you get a really light, bright, cold green. So you can push a bit of white into it, and you can also do this to produce a little bit more softness in the background. So you can just work it quickly, and it will also break down any hard edges. So you just get a sort of cloudy effect. So what I've tried to do is get it slightly sharper here, slightly softer at the top. Okay, so next stage is we're going to paint negative shapes, and the negative shapes are essentially the gaps between the flowers, between the leaves. So it's the darks. And to paint dark shadows amongst the plants, I'm going to use more of the emerald green. It actually is called emerald green, this one, so that's the make of it. And I'm going to make it dark by adding a blue to it and a red to it. So the blue actually is a Windsor blue, but you could use a Tharlow blue. And in fact, you could use any deep blue, I think, would work on doing this. And I'm going to use crimson. And when you add crimson to green, as you'll see in a second, I'll just get the palette and show you. So here's the palette. And when you put green and crimson together, you see you almost get black. And in fact, if you get it perfectly balanced, you can get a black. So that's the first stage. But then you can also make it more blue or more warm by adding more red. So let's get a nice bit of that. And again, I'm not using any excess water. It's pretty much neat. So now I can go straight into this and place some darks. And what I'm trying to do is not brush it too much because it will pick up previous colours. I'm just flicking it, and with a 1-inch filbert brush, flicking it between the shapes here. You can also, if you do sort of vertical strokes and leave some of the green behind, you can get the suggestion of stems. And then into the background, I'm going to add a bit more blue and white. So we go to a bit softer up here. Let's leave a bit more white. So it produces a sort of bit of a grey sense of distance, just to take the eye across. I mean, it doesn't really do this, but it's a way of trying to bring the focus back into the the centre. So that's a softer colour. But we don't see the sky in this painting. We just see a field, a meadow, whatever you want it to be, with poppies. So it's abstract shapes essentially, but the looser you are, the more likely you are to get a naturalistic form. If you try too hard, it doesn't quite work. It's an interesting philosophy for life, really. Sometimes, you know, the harder you try, the more elusive your goal seems to be, and sometimes just chilling out, relaxing, brings you closer to what you want. Taking a step back, like Monet did when he was painting his huge flowers. He took a step back to see what he wanted so he could make it work. If he'd gone in there with a fiddly little brush, he'd never have achieved it. So there we go. So now we need clean, bright colours for the poppies. So I can either clean this brush up or take a completely new brush. Let's see how clean I can get it. Now to get these pinks, I'm not going to be able to get those pinks straight onto these colours. So I'm just picking up white, neat white, and I'm going to attempt to paint the whole group of poppies, not individual flowers so much, but big groups of it. Now, you don't have to do this exactly, even at this stage, because where you put your pinks on top of these and they go over the edge, say onto the greens or the mauves, you'll find that you'll get a darker shade, a less bright shade. I might have to, I'm choosing areas which are going to work as well, so I'm not following the composition exactly, but I'm generally following the concept. And I like the, you know, big and then not so big, and this poppy's lost a few petals, and then there's little ones in the distance. And let's get some more white. In fact, those of you who are very, if you like, free with your painting style, can even put paint straight on from the tub like this. You can literally squirt it on. You can do it from a tube, do it from a pot. And one of the advantages of doing it like this is it doesn't pick up the other colours. You literally place it, or you can do it with a palette knife. Or you can do it like this, and then you can get your brush and push it into shape. But what's happening now is I'm getting thicker bits of paint, which create texture and will retain those marks, which will catch the light, catch the eye. So we start to work more like an oil artist here with thicker paint. So you can do it literally squeezing it straight out. And then you've got to be patient and let that dry. So whilst it's drying, I'm going to do another little bit of mixing, see if I can get the green leaf better now. So this time I'm going to take my emerald green straight with white, but what I may do is I may have to add a bit more blue. So I'm using, again, if you look at the palette, thick, undiluted, and there's no running water. That palette can go upside down, nothing falls out of it, okay? You're thinking, it will? No, it won't. So, really light green. Let's see if I can get a match for that colour. So this is 90% white, 10% green. Very close. I could have a little bit of yellow in there. Let's see what happens if I put it on here. It's this sort of lovely, fresh, there you go, it's that sort of green. And like when I was showing you the Manet painting earlier with his very subtle shifts of shade on his leaves, for example, as this goes over, you'll notice that some strokes pick up a bit of the underneath colour and look darker. Some, so I'm getting little dark bits in there. Some don't. So it's just giving you natural variety. A few little specks in here. So, and then a few hints of it back here. So no tiny brushes yet. All done with the big brushes. So let's get the pinks ready. So this might require another brush. So I'll get a 1 inch. This is actually, it's not actually a 1 inch. It's probably a 5/8 or something. This is a sable brush. So it's really a watercolour brush, but it produces a lovely sharp edge. So I should be able to get exact shapes now in my poppy leaves. So I moisten this brush. And then if I add the white straight to the crimson, I get a really lovely bright pink. I've also got scarlets and mauves in here, so I can add a bit of blue for that. But for the scarlet, we won't actually use scarlet. I'm going to do a mixture of cadmium orange and crimson. I could use cadmium red, straight, But by using, here we go, cadmium orange and crimson with white, you get a really beautiful sort of sunny, orangey poppy. And if I have less white in it and more crimson, you again get the next shade. So I'm just adding this straight into the white paints at the moment. And if I was really patient, which of course you know I'm not, which I was, I could get the colour going onto the dry surface. So I'll just aim for an area where it's a bit thinner. And so what I'm trying to do is go into the centre of little groups of flowers and just flick outwards to get all these lovely petally edges. So as a technique, you can see, let's go a bit more pink. So I'm just varying between the orange and the crimson. And I'm picking up the white off the paper. And if I want to put a few little distant poppies in, just like so, just little corners of the brush, I'm constantly rotating the brush to produce a different mark. Don't just go bang, 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 bang like that. What you want to do is flick it this way, that way, push it harder in one flower, less on another, and every mark is different. And every flower comes up with its own characteristics. And there'll come a stage where you might say, look, there's a big poppy up here. Let's do it like that. So let's have a go at this big poppy. I'll do it on top of the dark here because it's bigger than the white that I did. And it goes more purpley underneath. And so now for the purpley bit, I pick up a little bit of my blue. Straight into the mix. I haven't rinsed my brush out, so down here. And it gives this lovely dark there. And I can also use the same mixture for producing the little centres where you see a poppy tipping towards you. You get with a little dark centre. So I can do it for that. So I have a quick rinse because that's going too purpley again. Rinse, 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 and squeeze it on my tissues to get any residual colour out of it. So I can start with a fresh colour. And then we just go into another straight mix of cadmium orange and crimson, alizarin crimson, and then we get the next colours. And again, I'm putting it on. I'm not brushing it out. Being a soft brush, I'm literally just placing the brush, but maybe flicking across with it as I take it away, moving it slightly sideways and lifting. So I try to get a different shape on each petal. And I mean, I have to say, I've not really studied these poppies with any of the scrutiny that they deserve. But if I can get a hint of poppy by doing it in this manner, hopefully with a bit more care, I could even form real poppy shapes. So it's about technique that I'm showing you. And just to give the picture a bit more of a playful quality, let's go back to the yellow. And again, I could just get my lemony yellow and do this, but I think I want a little bit of white in my yellow, so I'm just going to get white into it and then flick it with the brush a bit more. Because there's some little, I don't know, buttercups or other things growing in between that set it off. I think that yellow there is a bit too strong, actually. So you can go in and add a few other colours just to add a bit more drama. That's too strong, that yellow, so I'll lift it away. And in fact, I want to put the green leaf, I love this sort of raggedy green shape of the leaf, back in front here. So I'm going to go back into my green, mixing it in the palette, and put it so it's overlapping that. And then if you're trying to actually produce something with I suppose a little bit of realism about it, we want to emphasise these stems, and this is where this sable brush comes in, because you've got the really lovely thin edge to it, and you can literally just use that edge to put stems in like so, or you could use palette knife or credit card. And then I go in, when I've done those green stems, I'm just putting a little bit of crimson into the same green to grey it, and then you can put a slightly shadowy version of the same thing in here. So where I've got a light area, I get to go back and put my stem in. And I've also got some poppy heads here, and this will work for that. And at the moment, one or the other poppies are in flower, the poppy heads are green, but they go, this is where you need a little bit of detail. So I'm putting in some little blobs of green, and sort of middle green here from the same colour as the stems. And then we've got their little crowns, and this is where you can get a smaller brush, ultimately, something, so this is just a really worn out little flat brush. And so on each one of these I can actually put the little sort of crown at the top, just a few details, and also I can put a bit more shadow underneath them. So let's go a little bit dark underneath, and again I'm brushing this colour straight into the wet paint. And I can also use a brush like this to add a few more contrast. So bits of detail at the end, and it's really up to you how much detail you want to put in and how much you don't. You can put in suggestion of other things growing. You can put in, you can even use a sponge to go back into it. But the idea is to keep it very loose. And one other technique that could be useful here is to use, I'm just seeing if I've got a sort of filbert brush. This is just a small one, fairly dry. So the other thing you can do is get a dry brush and just do little flicks across the surface to produce things like grasses and or texture in some areas. But don't do it everywhere. Be selective. See if you can just put a few other little broken up marks and trying to create the sort of naturalistic look of the poppies. There you are.